Welcome to Brews and Buzzwords, where we are talking today over our brews, coffee from the coffee machine at work, which I haven't had in a year plus. And our buzzword today is hustle culture. So I'm really excited to talk to George today about exactly what you think about hustle culture, and I think a little more of the angle of like anti-hustle culture, right?
For sure.
Okay, so my guest needs no intro, so let's go for it. I'm gonna start this conversation a little organically and ask if you remember when I was interviewing here and I asked you about your values.
Yeah, that's something that stands out to me to this day. So you were the first person that ever asked me about that. And we'd obviously hired and we had staff, and but when you asked me about our values and my values and the company's values, it was really eye-opening, because obviously we have, as human beings, we have certain values that we live by. But as an agency, an organization, that had never been communicated out. So there was never anything documented or formalized to educate the staff on what we as an agency truthfully believe in. So it was awesome. It was a great spark that was required to formalize how we position ourselves, what we believe in. And that has, I think, been integral for the staff, the newer staff that have come since we hired you, right? Because now we understand what we stand for, and we understand what we want to work towards and how we want to be treated as human beings in the organization. So I will never forget that day.
Do you remember what your answer was though?
Loosely. What did I say?
I felt like it was a non-answer.
Probably.
It was like, we do good work, and like I'm a nice guy, and like
I think that was it. I think
it was like we have fun together too.
I think that was the answer. I think it was like, we're ethical and moral, and I'm a nice guy to people, and that was like.
That's generally it.
It was generally it.
But the flip side of that is, with that non-answer, I still came to work here. And I think one of the things that resonated with me that people always said was that there's really good work-life balance here. Like, for an agency, it's not a typical agency. So I was really told that like most people are gone by 5 o'clock, that everyone here has a family, so they really respect your boundaries. And if you have a ton of work to do, like everyone's willing to say like, I can help you, even if they're a developer, even if they're a designer, they don't know what you do, like they're willing to help. And I kind of thought, okay, sounds like a healthy balance to me. So I think that's a good lead-in for what I think is one of your values, and like we haven't really been able to reach that until the last couple of months, which is non-hustle culture.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
And as a father of 4 kids, and part of my inability to define when you ask me my values, because there was no sense of like the need for it, because you just live it. You tend to think that you're living a certain set of values to respect others and all those sorts of things. But absolutely, one of my core beliefs has always been, again, as a father of 4, I want to see my kids grow up, and I don't want to be burning the midnight oil and not missing out on my kids' upbringing.
Yeah. So
it's super important to have that balance.
So maybe we've gone too far already. How would you define hustle culture? And I think we've called it like hustle porn, hustle culture. I'm gonna avoid hustle porn so that we don't like mess with algorithms on YouTube. But how would you define it yourself?
I see hustle culture as being a manipulation of truth and reality. Meaning, when you have tools like social media that allow you to put 15, 30-second snippets, and basically you put on a performance of how you want to be perceived. Yeah. And that perception could be very toxic to those who are watching that particular moment in time that could be staged and faked. But to to the person witnessing it, it sets a tone that in order to be successful, you need to grind 24/7. You need to forget about everything, all of the joys of life, and only get fixated on this thing that you're working towards.
Yeah.
And a majority of the time, it's material.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is detrimental. And also, another layer on top of that is the fixation on numbers. So we do these conversations, and we're not going to get millions of people to watch this. If they do, great. I hope they get something valuable out of it. But when you get fixated on the numbers of likes, and
The vanity metrics,
the
right?
vanity metrics, that to me is so toxic, because if you can impact one person and give them one nugget of advice that they can now carry forward and implement, that in and of itself is gratifying and valuable. And you may never hear about it.
Right.
You may never know that you impacted somebody's life. That's so to imply that in order to be successful, you need to forego all of the other joys of life and only focus on the vanity metrics and burning out and working hard, and that's the only way to be successful. I think that is very harmful.
It's like this entire thing of like glorifying busy, of making it really like, I think I wanted to talk about how on your side of things, the last video you did, you said it looks like the guy that rents a jet and is like, I got this jet and like my business is doing this well and we're pulling like this many tens of thousands of dollars, like here's my luxury vehicle and everything. What I see in like my corners of the internet is really frequently this, be your own boss. Like empower yourself, have a side hustle. Like you can have it all. You can have your kids, you can earn more. And then there's this whole Sheryl Sandberg lean in of like, this is what a successful entrepreneur's morning looks like. And it's like, I get up at 4 a.m. after sleeping for 2 hours and I manage to work 150 hours a week. And, you know, because of that, I'm a millionaire. Like, that's the culture I think that we're kind of fed right now, that is this picture of success and that you have to work towards.
Yeah, and I think it's the thing that I struggle with, and you know, I can't claim to know how information is digested by you or how I consume information and how that resonates with me.
Yeah.
What I would love to, if I were a teacher or if I could give any sort of guidance to anybody, it'd be like, put everything in context. And I think that's a part that we're missing, because when you're being fed that in order to be a woman boss or a good boss as a woman or as a man, like, I don't know, maybe that is something you want. Maybe it's something that you do want to strive to be successful as a woman in an industry that's not predominantly women or isn't predominantly a certain race or believes in certain things. It's so hard to criticize like Sheryl Sandberg. It's hard to criticize. Maybe that's what she wants and that's what she deems is important for her to be successful. But then to position that as the only way, as the only thing that is going to allow you to be successful is by doing these steps. Take these steps to be successful.
Right.
It's a hard thing to swallow, and it's also a difficult conversation to have.
Well, I think that the Sheryl Sandberg lean in thing, the critique around that was that, okay, like, you have help. You have the privilege of having X amount of stature in life already in order to accomplish these things. And what that kind of brings to mind to me is like this dumb Pinterest quote that's like, you have as many hours in a day as Beyonce. Yeah, of course I have the same hours a day as Beyonce, but I'm also not able to have help and have established a career and have all the things that she has in order to accomplish what she has now, right? So you're in a different path, and like to isolate something into like a pretty little inspirational sentence like that is like demeaning of like a lot of people's places in life.
But let me ask you, you have the same hours as Beyonce, and so do I.
Yeah.
Right? Do you want what she has? Is that what you're aspiring for in your life?
And that's the question too, because the whole question of hustle culture is like, what are we all striving towards in this hustle? Like, what is that ideal of success, right? So how are you measuring it?
For sure. So one of the things that I think, again, going back to context and understanding what you as an individual want. I would be a hypocrite if I said, when I see a post with a person driving a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, is something that I don't want. Because I love exotic cars. I always have as a kid. I used to work in an auto shop. I love cars. I would love to own a car. Does that mean that I would leverage that car or by having that car, that is my idea of what success is, and I have to work endless days, endless hours, miss out on, we talked about a picnic this morning.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to that picnic because I had to grind and hustle, and I missed out on that micro moment that I could have enjoyed, but I put that aside because in order for me to have that exotic car, I need to miss out on other things in my life, and I only can work to be successful. I'm like me contextually, if I'm able to one day get an exotic car, I don't want to sacrifice things in my life to get there. So if I get there and I'll be very happy with it because it's something that I've always wanted. You, on the other hand, you may want something else. I don't want to be Beyonce. I don't. Yes, we have the same amount of hours, and I don't have the support that she does. Great, but that's okay. That's cool. But for somebody outside of Beyonce, somebody aside from Beyonce to say you're not Beyonce is wrong, in my opinion. Only Beyonce can say that if you're having a conversation with her and asking her, how do I become Beyonce?
Yes. And
was that long-winded?
It's just so much of Beyonce. It's just Beyonce. And
she's great.
Yeah, but it reminds me of the Office quote where Michael says, "I am Beyonce, always." But like, I was prepping for this. I was reading this one article. It was a New York Times one, and I think it was titled, "Why are millennials pretending like they love work?" Like, I think that was the title. Google something along those lines. And I think that opens this massive conversation around the fact that we are basing this a lot around social media and what we're pushing as an idea of like what our life looks like, right? So why are we always like, I love Monday, hustle hard, rise and grind? Like, why is there that principle throughout this whole generation? And I think the article kind of concluded that, you know, myself being a millennial, like we graduated into this massive recession. It was hard to find work. There's questions about like gig economies and like, do millennials love having gigs? And I would say, no, we don't fucking like having gigs. We like to be in a salary where we have benefits, where we have that security. The gig part of it is that we are desperate to make money because of how unaffordable real estate is and how much student debt we're in. But I think what the article kind of encompassed was like, we also understand how to brand ourselves. So there's this whole sense of like, if you brand yourself well online, that's going to set you up for a good job, good careers, and to be sought after and to be able to find that security that's going to get you, I don't know, in the end, hustle for a great career, more money, like, I don't know what.
And this goes back to like, it is a complicated thing to unravel.
Yeah. Because
you in your statement there, you even said, like, real estate is so expensive. Mm-hmm. So to you, real estate is important. Having ownership of property perhaps is important. So perhaps that's something that you want to strive for. There could be other millennials that don't necessarily care for real estate. I know a lot of millennials, I'm a Gen Xer, but I know a lot of millennials that are quite content with rental. They would prefer to rent. They don't want the responsibility of ownership. And perhaps that is a point in their life that they are in. But going back to hustle culture to imply that the only way you can feel gratification and satisfaction is by living in an 18,000 square foot mansion with a helipad.
Yeah.
And that's what is going to get you happy in life is wrong. But then the conflicting part is I read an article the other day as well about I think the title was, and I'm paraphrasing here because I forgot exactly, but it was like, I would rather be rich and unhappy than poor and unhappy. And it's like, okay, so the article goes into like why wealth is important and yada, yada, yada. But it's like, would you rather be poor and happy? If you were not wealthy, but happy, would you rather have that than being really, really wealthy and unhappy? Like, what is the essence of life? What is it all about?
So,
and as you get older,
are we getting towards the fact that this really unhealthy part of hustle culture is really that a lot of what is cookie cutter out there is telling you that this is what success looks like? Like, success is the mansion and the private jet and all of that. And like, do you think it's being fed enough to people that they're like, yes, this is what success looks like, and they're not measuring it on any other metric of their own?
I think that's the dilemma. But it's also like generalizing it too much, because truthfully, I love coming to work. Honest answer. If somebody were to say, do you love what you do? I'd say, yep, I do. I love what I do right now. 6 months from now, I might be like going through something and you could ask me that question and it may be a different answer. Maybe I'm stressed out. Maybe there's too much going on. But overall, from the day the agency started to this moment right now, I've loved the industry we're in and what I do. And yeah, I work hard. I do put a lot of hours in here and there. I try to have my boundaries, which I think are important. But I don't get fixated, and maybe this is just a getting older thing. Maybe I value life a little differently now because of circumstances that surround my life. And as my parents get older, and as I have friends who have fallen ill, you start to get better perspective on what's important in life. If you were to ask me at 18 what was important to me, and you ask me now in my 40s what's important, it's two different things. But the foundation of what's important to me has always stayed the same. Going back to what's your values, being a good person, having good morals, having good ethics, treating people like you would want to be treated. Those are like foundational to me in my whole life. So if I can do that and I could give myself a sense of comfort and be happy, me happy, not you happy, not the camera guy happy, me happy. That's important to me. And if I can share that with others, if I can make others around me happy through things I can do and I have the means to do, there's nothing better in life. I don't need, if I get a mansion one day, great, but I don't need it. Like, it's,
right.
You know?
I think one of the things about like hustle and how deeply it's ingrained in culture is it creates like workaholism, right?
Yes.
And that workaholism is this dynamic that says that, okay, your worth as an employee, of course, as an employee, like, you are going to be measured by your productivity, but it seeps into your everyday life, right? So like, then your productivity feels like, okay, what's the ROI on me watching something on Netflix or like listening to a podcast? So then you start to, I think, trickle into things where it's like, if I'm going to listen to a podcast or read a book, it better be about my career, or it better be something that's going to advance my productivity. So it can get into this place where you feel like everything that you have to do outside of work has to be productive as well. And I think I've been in that like a few years ago even, where everything kind of had to have an output. And that is so draining, and it leads to just burnout because you never feel like you're off the clock.
I think we have a serious problem where we don't appreciate getting bored.
Yeah.
Boredom is no longer allowed. You have to do something every single minute of your day. Even in your sleep, you're being trained on how you should condition yourself to sleep, to have certain types of sleep in order to be successful.
Yep.
And it's like, pump the brakes here for a second. We're human beings. We have emotions. We have things that, yes, sleep is important. Yes, productivity is important for gratification if you enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
But we have a hard time with being bored. It is frowned upon when you are not producing. What the fuck is wrong with being bored and doing nothing? Being mindless is not acceptable anymore.
Right.
And that is crazy to me because you are in overdrive from the moment you wake up, actually 24/7. You're in overdrive now. You're not allowed to not be in overdrive. And that is a fucking crazy way to live your life. Because if you can't take a moment to be bored and to just daydreaming nobody even uses the term anymore. It's gone. I grew up with daydream.
Yeah.
The greatest moments, man, is like you could just sit back and not have to think and worry and daydream and imagine.
But to get to the point where you can daydream or turn it off or do anything, that's like your luxury vacation, right? It's like you have to earn that for some reason now.
Yeah.
I think the hustle is dehumanizing.
I think we're fortunate in a way in our industry, and I'll explain. We have a lot of creative people in every discipline, from marketers to designers and UX and developers and copywriters. And there is no fucking way that every morning a designer, a developer, a marketer, a writer, whatever discipline you're in, wakes up and says, today I'm going to be uber creative because my job insists that I am. You are going to have some rough patches through your day, and you should not be judged on a few of those days. You should, if you're having a rough patch, there's probably something external impacting your ability to produce, because we brought you on because you have disciplinary and you have skills and a craft and you enjoy the industry that you've embraced and you're part of. So as an employer, your expectation is that these individuals come to work and yes, they produce, but they get gratification of what they're producing. We're not robots. We cannot wake up every morning and be like, today I'm going to do the best design. Today I'm going to do the best digital marketing strategy I've ever done. And tomorrow I'm going to come back to work and do an even better digital marketing strategy. It's fucking impossible.
And that's like this productivity trap. The expectation that you, as a human that's being paid for your labor, your services, are functioning at 100% for exactly 40 hours every week.
Right.
Or 60, or however many in order to produce, right? And that part of it is just like, I think it brings us all the way back to that whole factor of, this is a good place to work because there is balance. Like there is this sense of like, when you're gonna stop things. I think I want to talk about like our team norms, because like your value of having, not wanting to be too into hustle culture, I think a value leads into a norm, which is how a team behaves together. When we used to be in the office, really, like people would be leaving at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, like trickling out of the office, but it's because we did start early and everything. There's a sense of we don't stay on the clock after hours as well. And that's been hard for me to teach some of our employees that came from other agencies, where they're like, oh yeah, I'll just like answer some emails 6 p.m. tonight, 11 p.m. I'll answer on the weekend and stuff. Like setting that boundary is a really important part of like stopping that hustle and like creating that culture, right? How would you say you influence creating that culture in this workplace?
It's interesting because you learn a lot from your colleagues. You truthfully do. Like, I enjoy what I do. So if there's an opportunity where my kids may be in bed or I want to check in on something, I still have a curious mind. So I don't want to beat myself down when I reply to an email at 8 o'clock at night, because I feel like, that's going to get me some satisfaction because I'm answering a question or I feel like I'm getting ahead for my next day. But I really try to maintain boundaries because my joys in life go beyond perhaps the dollar. I mean, listen, money's important. There's no question. We live in North America and it's expensive, especially in Toronto. It's an expensive place to live and raise kids. So we need finances to be able to supplement that. But, going back to learning from my colleagues, I mean, you were really, instrumental in setting boundaries and talking about conversation. Why do you set boundaries? Well, because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, it's interesting. I've never really heard anybody put that perspective on things. Let me try it, right? The practice that I've gotten into recently because of boundaries, and I think it was either you or somebody in the agency, where it's like, hey, you can schedule and send emails. I think it was you. I think I was at your desk.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and I'm
clients.
Like, you can do that. I didn't even know that there was a drop down to schedule an email.
Yeah.
So now I'm super respectful of like when I send an email after hours, because I do check my emails, I'll schedule to send it the next morning at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to bother somebody's personal time.
Yeah.
You're not robots. You have families. You have kids. You have things you want to do.
Right.
And you shouldn't be distracted by, oh shit, my boss just sent me an email and now I have to stop everything I'm doing to get back to them.
Yeah.
And I do the same thing with clients, truthfully. Like I will schedule responses back to clients. So it's the next morning. So if they're busy doing whatever they're doing after hours in life, let them deal with it the next morning.
Yeah. That's what I say like to staff too. I'm like, you don't have to check your emails on weekends.
Yeah.
But I know like phones are set up for alerts. Like you'll get notifications. I don't know if people have their Slack notifications on. So like doing it from like the sender side is like, it's nice, right?
It's super
I did
nice.
it just Sunday. I was sending you an email on like Sunday afternoon. I was like, no, I scheduled it for like Monday 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah, I got it.
And I was like, yeah. And I was like, afterwards I saw you were like in the pool and everything. I was like, I'm glad I did that.
Well, it's cool. Again, for me, I think going back to the person.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with it, but I set my boundaries. So I have certain boundaries. I don't declare to have them written down anywhere so that there's this grand declaration of George's hours are X and here are his rules.
Yeah.
And only conduct yourself this way when you're working with George. And here are Sylvia's declarations and only conduct. Like everybody has their boundaries and they're different than one another's. So I appreciate, we have staff that, sometimes it's like 9:30, 10 o'clock and you're like, where are they? But you'll get an email from them at 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Or 8 o'clock. And that's cool if that's kind of like how they want to conduct themselves.
Yeah.
The expectation from the other end shouldn't be that I'm going to now respond to immediately. If somebody sets certain boundaries, but you start picking up on people's individual boundaries, right? And understanding how people operate. I know that you're very keen on like, I have my boundaries and I put in my hours and I work hard during the day and I produce.
Yep.
But when it's my time, it's my time. And I love that. And I know that because I've worked with you as long as we have now.
Yeah.
And you start to learn people's habits, and some of our other staff, like I know that I can get a hold of them later on in the day or wherever.
Yep.
I try not to because I want to respect their boundaries too, but I know that if there was push come to shove and I needed help, they'll be there to help.
Yeah.
But it's only in emergency, certain situations.
Exactly. And that was like a big part of trying to even like write out team norms to push out this idea of, hey, we're not about this like hustle, work all the time and you'll be rewarded for working yourself to death, right?
Right.
Because I think the thing that it leads to is without boundaries, resentment. And like that resentment really becomes like, just feeling like work isn't worth it anymore. Like it just creates burnout and everything. And I found that like that's happened to me in the past. And I am hard on boundaries, even with staff. So like I had somebody that said like, I'm taking this day off, but I'm gonna come to these meetings. And I was like, I'm drawing a hard line. And like, if it's your day off, like I don't even want you at those meetings because I just don't want this like slippery slope to happen where everyone else feels like that's the expectation at all, or that I want that from everyone.
So let me spin it on you.
Yeah.
Because this happened recently with you.
Yeah.
Right?
I
Remember?
did it too.
It was a couple weeks ago.
I did it too.
We had a Friday, you had it off.
Yep.
And it was an 11 o'clock meeting.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll handle it. You're like, no, I'll pop in.
Yep.
And I was like, okay. That was a decision you made, right?
Exactly.
Like, it wasn't like I was insisting that you had to be there.
Yeah.
And this is where I get to like, I don't want to tell you how to do it. I understand that there are boundaries. I'm like you. If somebody's got a day off, take it the fuck off.
I know.
And go enjoy.
Oh, I did that. And then like, I was like, shit, I'm setting an example here. And that's why I was like, I'm drawing a hard line. And I'm like, once I draw that line though, like, I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I'd be a hypocrite. But like, I was really like, that's your day off. And like, I'm not gonna
I appreciated that because you know how important that meeting was for us.
Yeah.
That was the big presentation and solidifying the new opportunity with that client. So I valued that a lot. And what that leads to, in my opinion, if you are somebody with ethics and morals, when your staff approach you the next time when they need that extra time off, you got to remember those moments.
Yeah.
And you got to reward them and accept that they want that extra couple hours off without penalizing them and saying, go book it on a vacation time or whatever. Like give back what they're giving you. And I think, going back to like hustle and grind, and it's always just about work. It has to be about humanity and understanding the individual. Yeah. So, our culture here, we're very we're flexible and, you need an extra couple hours or day. Yeah. Cool, man. Like, whatever. I know you've earned it.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing is like, earn it. Like, don't expect it, earn it, and then take it. Nobody's going to criticize you. To come in day one and just be like, give it to me because of a title or because of seniority and because of whatever, that to me is all a crock of shit. Earn it, come in, work, earn it. And if you're working for an organization that values what you put in and values those additional moments, thank the employee. Thank them for that. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a thank you, which is good enough for me if somebody thanks me for something, or that flexibility to take that additional time in lieu of what they put in on a day off.
Yep.
Be mindful of all those moments that they've put in that they didn't have to, right?
I think that's a huge part of it in leadership is being able to communicate that like you're not just going to be rewarded for working excessive hours, excessive overtime because it's about quality over quantity, right? Like I'm not expecting like overtime all the time or just grinding just because you need to or proving that you're on the clock and just like sitting there. Like we're not looking for people to like seat warm during a time. It's actual output.
Yeah, I think if you're going into an organization and it's full of staff that are resentful, I can't imagine what that does for those individuals' physical and mental health, because all you're treating them like cogs. They're just there to output, and you're not appreciating that they have families and life issues and they have their own desires. And if you're not helping them achieve that, man, I would hate to come in every day and be surrounded by toxicity and a bunch of staff that hate their jobs and are resentful and are treated like a number.
Yeah.
They're not even being called out by their name.
Yeah.
That would be such a depressing place to come and work. And so this goes back to if you're talking about values, you don't, for us, I never want to be a hypocrite. I've said it a million times inside our doors. And it's like, if I'm misbehaving a certain way, my expectation is that my team calls me out. I want to be called out. Mm-hmm. If I'm saying something that is acceptable for me, but nobody else, I want to be called out because that's not right. Mm-hmm. We're here, we spend a lot of time together. I mean, you're spending 8 to 10 hours a day with the same faces.
Yeah.
And you want to be mindful of the fact that those people around you have their own lives too. And to say, no, you're going to work till midnight tonight because I need this done. Some people may be okay with that because they know there's a deadline and we've committed to a client and whatever. But it cannot be the norm.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So have you dealt with burnout before?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I've always felt like no matter what I do, I want to give it my all.
Yeah.
So I don't know what burnout is. And I think that's the only way I can describe. I know that I've been stressed and I've probably come close to burnout, but it wasn't because of the work.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy the work. I think people, if you're mistreating people and then it starts to breed resentment and negativity, which ultimately leads to toxicity, you feel stressed, which can lead to burnout. I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've been given a task that needs to be done, whether it's at the agency or in my previous careers. When I've taken a project on and there was expectations around delivery, I delivered.
Yeah.
Because I enjoyed what I did for the most part. And the places that I didn't enjoy what I did, I left. You know, I was like, this wasn't for me. Or I just didn't do the work and wished to get fired. But I don't think I've ever been burned out because of work. I think I've been close to burning out because of toxicity.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I was like, in relation to what you're saying before about like being treated like a number, being treated like, you know, for your productivity and seen as someone that's just an output, right? Like, I know you've worked a lot of service jobs when you were younger, like I have too. And there's this whole sense of like, exactly when you clock in, that's like the minute that you start getting paid, especially like in hourly wages. But then from the employer, they're like, make sure that you come in 10 or 15 minutes earlier, and they ask you not to clock in before you're in, right? So there's this like whole like time theft factor where it's from whatever head office that's hiring, you know. They don't care about the part-time employer. And I think that's kind of where there's high turnover often because you aren't treated like a person at all.
It's interesting. I've been in those roles where I had to come in early, not clock in because payroll starts rolling the moment you do clock in. I think, you know, again, using experiences as a means of understanding how you apply what you've learned in life is really important. So I've been in those rules. Don't clock in. You're on the clock at 9. Don't be a minute late. You have a lunch for 30 minutes. Don't be a minute over 30.
Yeah.
You have 2 15-minute breaks. That shit was so messed up to me. It's like, I get 2 15s. What if I need like a third just to like stretch my legs?
Yeah.
No, you know, it was like, you're at your desk. And it was like kind of a really messed up way to treat a human being. Like, you're on a leash at a desk and we'll release the leash when you have your 15 and you got to plug back in. And it's like,
and that's like the seat warmer concept. It's like you have to be there in case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, for us, obviously as a business, you want production and productivity, but I go back to like, you can't possibly be as a human being, especially with all that going on in the world, like 24/7 grind. You will ultimately, you'll probably kill yourself. Like you will get to a point where you're unhealthy and you don't even realize it, like either mentally or physically unhealthy. Like you got to get up and stretch your legs.
That's the burnout thing. It's like it creeps in on you sort of
thing, right? It really
does. So like you don't realize it, but you're just like, I got a sink full of dishes, and it's like little things that fall through the cracks that's burnout. We started having like more conversations around mental health and like awareness of that. And I think like it's been really top of mind for us recently, more because of COVID and this like mandate to completely work from home, right? Like that connection, trying to make sure that we're staying on top of things. Tell me more about Like your thoughts on everything around mental health and like keeping that in mind for staff.
Yeah, so like one of the first things we implemented was our huddles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the fundamental human factors to have enjoyment in life is connection. Human connection is like foundational, right, for your health. And with that being kind of taken away from us, it was tough, man. It was like, shit, what do we do? And the huddles were conceived so that we could have the opportunity to just shoot the shit, get stuff off our chest, talk about what we were doing that night, the day before, the weekend, kids, whatever, we talk about everything, right? And also, like, as the pandemic, speaking about the pandemic, as it got further and further in, and the waves and all the news coming out about how terrible this thing was, you saw the impact that it had on our staff. Having 4 young kids at home, I see the impact it's had on them. Like, kids should not be with their parents this much, my belief. Kids need to go out and get in trouble, stir shit up, fall, get up, play with their other friends. Adults need to do the same. They need to be with other people. And as things got further down and as winter came, and I saw a benefit to the huddle, but I saw how it was impacting others and how difficult it was for certain people in our organization to deal with the lack of connection. So to compound that by adding another layer, I couldn't even imagine if we were the type of agency that was like, be at your seat. If you're not on Slack, if I can't get a hold of you between 9 and 5, that's warning 1. Like, to put that additional pressure on people during a time like this and not have that human approach of like how I would want to be treated. Listen, if I had an hour or two where I needed a mental break to be able to go for a walk, and a lot of us do, and I encourage it almost on every huddle, like, go get sunshine and go for a walk, just get some fresh air. I don't know how we would have all gotten through this, and I'm grateful that a lot of us have been able to support each other in that regard, and with the understanding that we treat each other as human beings first, and the work comes second, and the production of the work will, in my opinion, be that much better always if you treat human beings as human beings first.
And how weird is it that seems like a radical statement? To say that, like, in a workplace, you're first treated like a human, second treated like, okay, let's get the work done.
Because I think the stories from little companies like ours don't get out. You hear the production plants and the enterprises and the Amazons, and you hear the stories.
No bathroom breaks. Go as fast as you can.
Yeah, and it's like, man, like, what is the state of mind? And again, it's a difficult thing to talk about, because perhaps that line worker at the plant enjoys it and is like, I'm doing this because I'm making my kids' lives better, and I get gratification for what I produce. I know I know a few people who work in the auto plants, and they're literally like, they sit there and they do the same 4 things all day. But they get satisfaction at the end of the day when they know they had a small piece of that car being built. That was part of them, is in that car. And that's their takeaway, right? So I can't dismiss that. But as organizations, I think most are trying to do things to make the lives of their employees better. But I think there's still a lot of organizations that could care less. It's all about the shareholder.
Right, and they put their values in place just to be like, this is kind of like our generic values. But I think we see it a lot. We see it a lot because we're often the ones asking organizations, like, what are your values? And we see like the same ones all the time, and they can get kind of genericized, right?
For sure. And I think the one thing when, after, bringing you on board and, going through probably a couple of years of values exercises.
Yeah.
Like it took for us to really help define them.
Yeah.
The one thing that always stood out to me personally, can't remember what book it was in, but I was reading a story about a CEO who was a new CEO, went into an organization. They had a list of values, and immediately those values weren't being lived because it wasn't appealing to the shareholders. Like there was something going on. When we created our values, one of the things that I wanted to stand firm on is that I myself have to live and breathe those values. And I can't dismiss the exercises we went through and all that work we went through to kind of really hone in on the values. So if we're not living and breathing these values, they're just words.
Yeah.
They mean nothing. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these big enterprise. They have values, yeah, they're written.
They're always transparency, and then like nobody knows what's going on.
Nobody knows what's going on, and you know, yeah, it's like you need to live and breathe them, and you need to be called out on them when you're not living and breathe them, and you need to accept the fact that your staff should be allowed to call you out, regardless of title.
Right.
You know, and if one of our value, you know, if we want to be treated like humans, and we're treating people like robots, somebody needs to be called the fuck out. And it has to be management or leadership or whatever, the top. You got to call that person out, and you can't be fearful of calling them out. The problem is in these big enterprises, they're fearful because they're going to lose their job, which is
Of course.
most of the time.
It's
they're
like a
wealthy.
power dynamic thing. Like you just
Huge
can't.
power dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a value like being against hustle culture is really it's anti-entrepreneur, right? Like it's like a little bit, it's against the grain. You know what I mean? And I think with something like this value in particular, you have to lead by example so frequently. Otherwise people don't believe you.
For
They're
sure.
like, you might be putting it out there like one of those empty values, and everyone in terms of staff needs to see like, is George doing this? Is leadership actually doing this? Or are they like joking around? Yeah, because as soon as like you're like, okay, like let's take this flexibility seriously, and like they get in trouble for it, like it does have to come from the top, right?
I think so. I think it has to come from, it can't just be words on a screen. It cannot be. It has to be lived, and it has to be respected across the board. And again, you know, there are moments, there's no doubt that there are times where I will work on a weekend because I've got deliverables that I committed to. So I put that pressure on myself. And that's okay. I did that. I didn't, but I will not insist that somebody else needs to do that same thing. Now you may say, you know what, I'm going to put in some time on the weekend. I don't need to tell the whole world, but I just want to feel like I get this done.
Yeah.
That's your decision.
Yeah, I do it very secretly.
Well, it shouldn't be forced upon you. Because that would go against the values that you've defined, right? So it's complicated, but I think the non-complicated part is just being truthful to the values. Like you wrote them down, live and breathe them, respect them, and respect that other people have come to the organization because we have made that declaration. It's on our website. It is public. So when we're attracting new potential colleagues of ours, much like you, who didn't know what our values were and asked, now they know. So if they come in and they trust you, they are taking that leap of faith to come to your organization because you've declared these values, and then you are a hypocrite and you go against everything you've positioned yourself as, that's fucking terrible.
That's all there is to it. It's just terrible.
It's fucking terrible.
I think like to further complicate and bring in a whole new factor here, is there ever a risk of like being anti-hustle culture and saying like, we don't want to like work ourselves to the bone, that being a bad position for clients, like for clients to see that?
If so, then they're not the right clients for you. That's what I believe in. Like, if people don't value that you have boundaries, if people don't value that, clients aren't buying you 24/7. And clients aren't even buying you.
Yeah.
They're not. No client of ours owns us. They work with us. They partner with us. They trust us because of our intellectual property, because of the fact that we do work hard and we can accommodate and get what they're looking for done in the hours that we operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And if they cannot respect that, and I say it all the time, there's the door. There's no shortage of agencies in the world, no shortage of design and marketing firms.
Yeah.
Find somebody else. This is us.
Yeah. And I think that's like something that we've learned to do early on in client relationships to set the right tone.
Right.
Is to just say, account management wise, like these are our office hours, only because we work in a few different time zones now. And telling, 9 to 5 Eastern being our time zone is just like, that's when you can definitely reach us. You'll definitely get an email in 24, 48 hours, whatever our standard is. That setting the tone at the start can be an uncomfortable, or like maybe like to some people it feels like an obvious answer. Like to say like, reach us 9 to 5, here's my email and here's my phone number. It's obvious, but it sets the boundary right from the start to say like, this is how we're gonna have a healthy communication relationship at the start of it, right?
Yeah, and I think people respect you for that.
Because in a remote world, it's so confusing. It's like, where do I reach you? Is it Slack? Is it phone? Do I have to pre-schedule? How often are you gonna hate me if I email you all the time? Like, what are your boundaries for communication?
I would be hard pressed to think, and maybe I'm naive, but I would be hard pressed to assume most people don't value their own personal time.
Yeah.
So I would suspect that if I have that notion in my head that people respect their personal time,
right,
they would respect my personal time as well. It's not to say like I will bust my ass during the day, and if push comes to shove and I couldn't get something done, I'll make sure it gets done. If I committed to having it done today, then I'll bust my ass to make sure it gets done today. If it means I have to work till 8, 9 o'clock at night, but that will not be the norm.
right.
I will not make that the norm.
Yeah.
That is something that I committed to, assuming I can get it done, and I couldn't. But I don't want to retract from my commitment. Now,
that's the nice thing about having a boundary, because once you say, we work 9 to 5, when you cross it and people are aware of it, they see that you're going above and beyond and that that's not the norm.
Right. And also, by them knowing your hours and your boundaries, it also gives you the opportunity, because you now know that they respect you, you respect them, gives you the opportunity to go back to them with confidence and say, I apologize, I thought I can get this done today. Is it okay if I can, is an extra day good? You start to build a good rapport.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen a lot with us, to be honest. Like, I don't even remember the last time I couldn't follow through on a commitment and where I had to, grind 24/7 to get something done. It's just, we get stuff done. And if we can't, we have such great relationships because trust has been built to say, I'll get it to you tomorrow, I apologize.
And that's the interesting thing. Once you work with clients that see you as humans and understand that like they're just people working with people and we're creating relationships and communities, you don't get that like endless amount of output that you have to create for people, or like a demand that, your numbers have to be growing every single month. It's just being practical and looking at what's like practical to accomplish.
Yeah, and I think we do a really good job at positioning a lot of that early on. We're good educators too, right? Like, here's our boundaries, here's our hours, here's what you can expect, here's the output we're anticipating. We've done our due diligence, we've looked at metrics, like all that stuff, and we can deliver in the hours that we've got. We don't need any more. We know that we can do what we want to output for you in the hours that we operate. So it doesn't, and maybe every industry is different, and it's unfortunate, but the critical part of it is, going full circle back to, hustle culture. If you've positioned your organization as an organization that just hustles and grinds 24/7, I suspect you're going to have a lot of burnout. I suspect it's good, but you may not also. Like, it's, again, difficult to appreciate. Maybe those are called go-getters.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you want to hire a group of go-getters. I think we have a group of A players here that understand boundaries, but also understand how to deliver,
Yeah.
you know? And that's a beautiful balance to have.
It's a hard balance to find. And like, I think our first take at doing values, we named this value that we are sharing right now, work hard, play hard.
Right.
And you were just like, I fucking hate that. You're like, no, thank you. Please don't name it that.
So cliche. I used to hear that all the time. And I think why I hated it was because I heard it so much, but it was like, there was no play. It was work hard, ... Well, where's the play hard part come in?
Yeah.
And then that made that term really yucky to me. I was like,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because then you're working hard and you're like, do I even want to play with these people? Or
right.
like
Right. So I would say the one big takeaway from my experiences, and if I can share my knowledge, is if you treat people like people and humans and not tools or robots, not only will the satisfaction of your life become much more gratifying and better, the people you're working with on a daily basis, their lives are going to improve too. I fundamentally do believe that. You know, people don't want to be treated like disposable. You know, they have emotions and they have needs and desires and aspirations. And if you give them that opportunity and speak to them and nurture those opportunities, the output you're going to get is going to be that much better. That would be my biggest takeaway, is really treat people as if you would want to be treated.
Well said. If you stay till the end, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Leave a like, comment, or subscribe, and join us for more Brews and Buzzwords coming soon.
If you like what you saw today, leave a comment below, hit the subscribe button, like the video. We look forward to hearing from you.